All right, welcome to the Nerd Initiative Network. Only calling it that because we have no other better name at this time. I am joined by two of my favorite people, Yassine and Pooja, who you might know better as Mimosas and Popcorn. And Yassine, that guy. I see you. And we are here to talk about Ms. Marvel, which came out yesterday and is easily one of the most unique, fun, but also representative shows we've seen from the MCU maybe ever. And so I want to kick it off to you guys just to get your take and see what you think and your reactions. And I guess start with the initial reactions to the first episode.
I'll go first.
Yes, I should have guided.
So initial reaction, wow, just wow. I think from the get-go, I mean, with that intro, the way that it's well animated with all of the little doodles getting inside of Kamala's mind. It's such a great way to start off the series. And really just the whole episode really gets you immersed in her world and her relationships with everyone in her life. It's not as in depth as we would like, but I'm assuming that's something that'll come, in the later episodes. But I love this episode. I think it's going to be a great start to a wonderful series, and I'm excited to see so much more.
I feel exactly the same way. I read the comics very recently just to kind of get a touch of who Kamala Khan is, and I felt like the episode completely captured her energy and captured her imagination, and also just who she is in her world around her. Right, like you mentioned, like you get a small glimpse of all the different people in her life. While we don't go too far in depth yet, like you said, it's probably gonna happen moving forward. But I think my favorite part of the episode was, like you mentioned, the animations. A friend of mine mentioned that what we saw around her as she's thinking of these ideas, that's what we think about all the time. It's like all these different things floating around her head, ideas, concepts, theories. But we saw that visually, and that was so beautifully done. And for so many, as just a Marvel fan, I feel like they were seen, which leads to representation, right?
Yep, definitely. Yep. It's like representation just skyrocketed. And I think this is something that we've been all waiting for such a long time.
Mhm.
For me, I mean, I was the same way. I didn't read any of the comics until very recently, like a couple months ago. And I'm just so immersed in her world. And I think knowing of her existence from back in 2014, I just kind of like Wikipedia'd her and I was like, okay, well, she seems cool. And it's great to see
Mhm.
that she's here now. But never in a million years did I ever think this was actually going to happen because representation was not the biggest thing back then. And now it really is. And it's really showing that Marvel is definitely trying to do their best to really expand their universe beyond what we've already seen. And that's something that I am so appreciative of them for. And I don't know, I'm so excited. And I am going to assume that this is going to really kickstart a lot of new projects of featuring different characters of different backgrounds. And I think that's such a beautiful thing.
For sure, for sure.
And I was going to say really quick, you guys had an amazing discussion in one of our channels. I don't know if we're breaking the third wall, being like, "Oh, it's a Discord channel where I'm talking about Marvel and different things like that." And I was struck by what I learned from just watching your discussion. And you guys were talking about parents and how you can relate. And like, first of all, I love the dad. He's my favorite. He's my favorite extended family character thus far. His Hulk moment was my favorite thing in the world. But I mean, I'd love to hear more about that because that was stuff that I learned, and I think that's the whole point of anything, right? Of this kind of entertainment, or it's just giving people a different perspective, educating them while at the same time they're obviously entertained and it's one of their favorite characters. But I learned so much just by watching you guys talk back and forth about all the cool, relatable facts that you hadn't seen before until the show came out.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me personally, I grew up Muslim. So seeing when it comes to media, right, especially when it comes to people who are Middle Eastern, they're always tied to extremism. And a lot of the shows that feature Middle Easterns, there may be some that are represented partially correctly, but they're always tied to something else. Something else happens in the show that affects them, and they have to go through all this conflict because this person did this. Where with Miss Marvel, it's kind of the first time that I've seen in media that they're being accurately represented. They're actually showing their faith. They're actually saying things like Bismillah, which is really amazing to see because you don't see that anywhere, right? And that's the life of an everyday Muslim in America, and that's what this story is kind of about. Is a 16-year-old Pakistani girl trying to find her way through America and trying to find her place in this country, and that's really just about everyone's story if they're Muslim. So for me to see that, it was just really beautiful. It warmed my heart. And also like this little cultural reference they threw in there about like they showed Amir praying, which was really amazing to see. They showed her mom talking to her friend, talking about how, oh, so and so didn't go through the marriage. Now they're off to Europe with some guy named Rob. And I distinctly remember a conversation. I was like 4, and my mom was talking to somebody and was like, if you're Muslim, you should marry someone that's Muslim. Stay in the culture, stay within the religion. So I was seeing that on screen. It's like, yeah, I remember that conversation. I had the same one. So it just talking about it now gives me goosebumps because it's amazing. And I can't wait to see more episodes and dive more into the show. Like I'm really excited to see them go to the mosque and kind of for everyone to kind of see what actually happens in a mosque, because everyone has, not everyone, but there are pre-assumptions to what happens in just Islam in general. So I'm so excited.
No, I totally agree. I'm not Muslim. I grew up Indian. I was raised with the Hindu religion. But like I know a little bit here and there about about what it is to be Muslim, and just reading the comics a little bit too. I feel like it's going to be a really positive representation of the religion itself and the culture that comes with it. And I think that's so great, especially for younger audiences who may have been raised a certain way and has been raised to think a certain way. And I think it's great to kind of mold us into a more positive outlook when it comes to, Islam and being Muslim. And I think, just kind of go back to like the family dynamic, that family dynamic feels like with the parents, it's like it's basically the mom and dad combined, and that's my dad. My dad was very strict, but at the same time he was goofy beyond belief. And I think that's why I related to that whole storyline so much, because my mom was raised in America. She has very American ideals, but my dad came straight from India. And so it's very difficult to navigate your life when you have an immigrant parent who comes here to the States and wants a better life for you. And that's definitely represented between Kamala and especially her mother. But that whole Hulk scene, it was funny at first, and then immediately I just started crying because I've done something similar like that. And it just broke my heart because I remember seeing like my dad's face just completely shattered. And it really brought back some memories. And I think it's still great that we're seeing our own personal experiences on the screen through other characters, because now I feel like, well, I'm not the only one who's been through this. I'm not the only one who's done something like that. And I think that's such an amazing thing for them to be able to do.
And to an earlier point where you said, obviously I think it's representative of also, we haven't really seen a teenage story in the MCU just yet. I mean, obviously Spider-Man, but not really, right? Like not really. If we can investigate that down the road of like, are they really close in age? she really acts like a true teenager. But it feels like it brings a lot of people together where people can talk about it and it can be a conversation starter and people learn. And I loved what Yassine said about the mosque. Like, I want to see that and I want to learn more. And for people that actually want to expand their horizons and expand their mindset and expand what they see and be open to all kinds of different things and celebrate differences, I think it's kind of a really cool launching point to talk about, which is exactly, it feels meta, but it's actually what we're doing right now.
Yeah. Pooja said when she was talking about having that moment where she cried, and this is not about Miss Marvel, but that was me for Moon Knight, to kind of have that story about mental health and mental illnesses and seeing this person who in their head believes they're broken. In reality, they're not. And having that process of having to deal with that trauma, like watching that was like, oh wow, I get this. So that's another conversation starter, being able to openly talk about mental health, and what it's like for others, because everyone's experience is different. And the same goes with Miss Marvel. Everyone's experience is different, but having something that we can all watch together, really opens that conversation to learn each other's differences, learn each other's experiences.
Did we ever think a superhero show would be able to do this? I mean, and you said back-to-back ones too. I mean, it's so important. And as you were talking about it just now about Moon Knight, I kept thinking, I'm like, in my head, I keep seeing the kaleidoscope of all these different shows that are just bringing in so much. And I think of the Eternals too, really opened up my eyes a little bit and they made it so organic too. With Makari and all these characters that are just so great and representatives for so many different people.
Oh my gosh, definitely. I think because I got into the MCU right around the time that it started with like Captain America and Thor. I was around 2021. And as much as I love these movies, I just thought, never in a million years, never. I'm never gonna see myself ever. And then we started getting into like phase two, phase three. We saw Black Panther, we saw Captain Marvel. And then phase four just exploded with all this representation. And
Yeah.
I really think that they're taking the time to really listen to fans that essentially want that representation. They want to be able to see themselves. And with Moon Knight, with the Eternals, Shang-Chi, and now Miss Marvel, we are being seen. And I think that's the most important thing in the world. It's just growing up and not seeing your face and being told that you're not normal looking, and now seeing that you are on the screen and that you are normal. It means so much to us.
It's amazing. You're gonna make me emotional. Um, and so yeah, we're one episode in, and you know, I before we go, I'd love to see. I mean, you seen touched on it a little bit. What are you both excited to see as we move forward?
I'm actually really excited to see her just navigate through being Muslim and South Asian, and at the same time balancing that out with her powers, more or less, and just seeing her thought process as she's making every decision along the way. I don't know. I'm really excited, and I'm also excited to see the origin story of her powers, because it's not quite clear yet. It's a little bit mysterious, so it'll be interesting to see how they play that out over each episode.
Yeah, I have to say the same thing. I'm really excited to see how they adapt her powers to the MCU, because of course they're different. She's not a human, at least that's how it seems right now. But I'm the way it's being set up, I'm thinking her powers has something to do with her family history. So I'm really excited to further dive into her history, just the unit that she has now, but also previous generations. Why is, for example, was it the grandma that had the
Yes,
the Bengal for?
Lavani.
What how did she have it, and what is her story? So I'm just really excited to kind of dive further into that.
I think it would be really cool if we found out like she was the original Miss Marvel, like, and you know, and
Oh.
obviously it skipped a generation, and you know, her mother, you know, is really protective because maybe something happened to the grandmother or whatever. But that it's super cool that it comes from almost like a family heirloom that is kind of bringing this power into her. So I think that's extremely interesting.
It's definitely going to bring up a lot of culture, I feel, and that's going to be really interesting to see how they play that out.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Well, thank you guys so much for doing this, and I am just beyond excited for the rest of the season. I know we all are, and yeah, thank you guys for coming, and thank everyone for out there for watching. And we'll be back with probably a better name and continue to evolve this as we go on. So